Have you ever wondered what really happens on the dark highways when the rest of the world is fast asleep? Tons of steel, thousands of miles of desolate asphalt, and drivers crossing the desert alone. But they aren't always alone. Tonight, I bring you 8 psychological horror stories experienced by truckers in the deepest hours of the night. Turn off the lights, lock your doors, and prepare yourselves. Because tonight, we aren't driving alone. There's a silence on the long stretches of Route 70 that isn't just quiet. It's heavy. It's the kind of dark that makes you feel like the asphalt beneath your wheels is the only real thing left in the universe. My name is Derek Washington. For 18 years, I've pulled freight out of Detroit across every desolate mile of this country. I thought I knew every trick the road could play on a tired brain. Blizzards, failed brakes, reckless drivers, and hallucinations born of 30 hours without sleep. But nothing prepares you for the night your own rig begins to hunt you down. It started on September 9th, 2023. I was hauling auto parts to Los Angeles in my dark blue Kenworth, a truck I built my life around. By the second morning, just east of Kansas, dawn was barely cracking the horizon when I glanced at my passenger side mirror. A blue rig was trailing me in the left lane. Same make, same dark navy paint, same glint of chrome in the morning light. At first, I thought it was just another driver for my fleet, but as it pulled side by side, my blood ran cold. It wasn't just a similar truck, it was mine. The exact dent on the front bumper, the faded paint patch on the driver's door, even the custom mud flaps. I slowed down to look into the cab, but the side windows were tinted pitch black, darker than charcoal. Hours later, at a fuel station in western Kansas, I saw it parked at the far pumps. I walked over. The cab door was slightly open, empty, but the engine was idling, and on the seat lay a leather-bound logbook, written in my exact handwriting. Same dates, same fuel stops, same routes. At 2 a.m., parked in a dark rest area, my CB radio crackled awake. A low, raspy voice came through the static, unmistakably my own voice. I am you, Derek, the version of you that made different choices. How many nights have you laid awake wondering how your life would look if you hadn't walked away from Jennifer? The twin headlights of the mirror truck lit up, not white, but a dull, predatory crimson. It lunged forward. For 6 hours, it chased me through the darkness. At dawn, a shadow stepped out from behind a pump, wearing my jacket, my boots, but with dead, hollow eyes. He whispered, "Trade places with me." I ran toward the station. When I turned back, he was gone. But whenever I drive into the pitch-black desert, I still look in my mirror, because every choice creates a ghost. And sometimes, those ghosts get tired of waiting in the dark. If you drive the desert routes between Arizona and New Mexico long enough, you learn that the wilderness remembers everything it claims. My name is Daniel Rodriguez. For 15 years, I ran night freight between Phoenix and Albuquerque along Interstate 40. On March 3rd, 2024, at 1:15 a.m., the highway was dead quiet. I clicked my CB radio to channel 19 just to hear a human voice. Breaker 1 to 9, this is Desert Rose. Anybody out there tonight? Static. Then, a sharp, crisp voice cut through, clear as if the speaker was sitting right next to me. Desert Rose, this is Night Guard. I read you loud and clear. It was a calm, weathered voice with a faint southern drawl. He told me to slow down immediately. He warned of a catastrophic pileup at mile marker 248, 12 minutes ahead, and instructed me to take the Winslow exit. My GPS showed no traffic alerts, but something in his tone commanded absolute obedience. I took the DT. An hour later, when I re-entered the highway past the marker, the road was completely clear. The very next night, at precisely 1:15 a.m. on the same stretch, the radio snapped on again. Desert Rose. Night Guard here. Pull into the next rest area now. Your left rear trailer tire is second from a blowout. I pulled over immediately, staggering out with my flashlight. Cold sweat hit my face. A massive steel spike was buried deep in my rear tire. Air hissed out rapidly. Had I been traveling at 70 miles per hour, the blowout would have flipped my rig into the canyon. I grabbed the MIC, my hands shaking. Night God, how in God's name did you see that tire from where you are? Who are you? I'm everywhere and nowhere, son. I sit at mile marker 267. Forever. Mile marker 267. I knew that spot. 6 years ago, a veteran trucker named Robert Hayes was killed there when a blowout flipped his tanker over the guardrail. I remember the steering wheel snatching out of my hands. The voice replied softly. I remember the tear of metal, and then the fire. Drivers keep dying on these roads, Daniel. If I can stop one more family from getting that 2 a.m. phone call, then staying here is worth it. The angels on these highways don't wear wings. They wear worn flannel jackets and drive phantom rigs. Every trucker has a sanctuary, a diner where the coffee is hot, the pie is fresh, and the neon sign feels like home. Johnson's Diner off Route 36 in Missouri was mine for over 10 years, until the night I stepped inside and found myself sitting in my booth. It was October 12th, 2023. A broken fan belt delayed me, and I pulled into the lot at 6 p.m. instead of my usual noon stop. When I opened the diner door, the waitress, Betty, dropped her coffee pot. The glass shattered on the floor. Her face drained of all color. Billy Ray, she gasped. What? What are you doing here? You've been sitting in your corner booth for the past 2 hours. I turned toward the back booth. Sitting there, cutting into a slice of apple pie, was a man wearing my red flannel shirt, my faded cap, my boots. He slowly turned his head. It wasn't someone who resembled me. It was me. The same scar over my left eyebrow. The same tired eyes. Well, Billy Ray, he spoke, his voice an eerie mirror of my own. You finally made it. The entire diner went dead silent. The jukebox froze. The clock on the wall stopped ticking. I am the man you could have been, he said softly. I'm the version who didn't buy a truck. The version who stayed home, married Sarah, and held Dad's hand in the hospital room while he passed away. He gestured around the room. The shadows stretched unnaturally across the walls. The faces of the other patrons weren't real. They were static, blurred figures like old photographs fading in water. This isn't Johnson's Diner, he whispered. This is the crossroads, the space between choices. Tonight, you get to trade. You take my family, my home, my peace, and I take you open road in your endless solitude. For a second, the vision of Sarah appeared beside him, smiling warmly. Everything I ever regretted missing was handed to me, but I looked at my double's eyes and saw a cold emptiness. No, I said, I've spent 30 years regretting my mistakes, but they are my mistakes. I won't steal another man's life. He screamed in rage as the diner dissolved around me into gray smoke. When I opened my eyes, everything was back to normal, except for a faded photograph on my table written on the back. The road not taken. Time flows differently when you're behind the wheel. But nothing in human understanding can explain the stretch of asphalt formerly known as Route 666 in New Mexico. My name is Angelo Foster. On November 17th, 2023, I was running late with a high-value shipment to Phoenix. I made the fatal error of taking the shortcut through the Devil's Highway, a narrow, unlit road swallowed by pitch darkness. 30 minutes in, I passed a mile marker sign, mile 47. 10 minutes later, another sign flashed in my high beams, mile 47. Then another, and another. My CB radio hissed with dead static. Cell phone signal died completely. I looked at the dashboard clock. 3:07 a.m. I drove for another 20 miles. The clock remained frozen at 3:07 a.m. The exact same rock formations passed by my window in a horrifying, infinite loop. Panicking, I pulled a sharp U-turn and floored the accelerator back toward the interstate. But the road behind me was identical. Mile 47. Same rocks. Same suffocating darkness. After what felt like hours, I spotted an old 1970s semi parked in the emergency lane. I pulled over and jumped out. The cab was empty, but a steaming cup of coffee sat on the dashboard. I grabbed the logbook on the seat. The last entry was dated November 24th, 1987. Stuck on Route 666. Time stopped. Signs all read mile 47. May God have mercy on my soul. I think I live here now. Footsteps sounded in the darkness. Out of the desert shadows stepped figures, dozens of drivers in clothes from the 70s and 80s. Their faces were hollow, skin gray as ash, eyes devoid of light. How long have you been here? I stuttered. Since 1982, a man rasped. You forget what sunlight looks like after the first decade. They slowly stepped toward me with withered hands. Instinct took over. I broke into a desperate sprint, slammed into my Kenworth cab, locked the doors, and yanked the steering wheel sharp right, crashing directly into the open desert terrain. Rocks smashed against my undercarriage, tires blew out, fiberglass shattered, and then a blinding light. My rig crashed through desert brush and slammed onto the pavement of US Highway 491. Real headlights flashed past, real signs, real time ticking to 5:12 a.m. I wrecked a $100,000 truck that night, but I walked away alive. Some roads don't lead to a destination, they lead to eternity. Rule number 1 for freight haulers: don't ask what's in the trailer. As long as the bill of lading is signed and the pay is right, you drive. I lived by that rule for 20 years, until Container 06 started knocking back. My name is Jimmy Sullivan. On December 14th, 2023, I picked up a rush load from a medical facility in Connecticut, bound for an unmarked facility near Atlanta. The pay was double my standard rate. At the loading dock, 2 men in white biohazard suits watched as a specialized crane loaded 6 massive, brushed metal canisters into my refrigerated trailer. Each canister was reinforced with steel lock straps and stamped with biological hazard symbols. These are temperature-sensitive biological samples, the supervisor told me, his eyes darting nervously. Do not open the trailer doors under any circumstance. And if the refrigeration unit fluctuates, call the emergency number in this sealed envelope. 6 hours into the drive, near Baltimore, I heard it. A faint, rhythmic tapping from behind my cab wall. Thump, thump, thump. I stopped at a rest area and pressed my ear against the trailer. 3 fast taps, 2 slow taps, 5 fast taps. Like a code. By Virginia. The tapping turned into sharp, frantic scratching, like iron claws tearing against the metal walls. The temperature gauge began violently swinging between freezing and 80 degrees. I tore open the emergency envelope and dialed the number. My cooling system is failing, I yelled, and whatever is in those tanks is scratching its way out. Do not stop, the woman ordered. Containment team is intercepting you at the drop site. The samples are becoming active. The scratching stopped. In its place were voices. Muffled, distorted voices speaking in a language that sounded ancient, harsh, and guttural. They were mimicking human speech patterns, trying out English words like children learning to talk. When I arrived at the drop point, a tactical squad in heavy armor rushed my rig with acoustic suppression cannons. They fired a sonic shockwave through the trailer. A horrific, non-human shriek erupted from inside, shaking my entire rig, followed by dead, suffocating silence. They paid me in cash and forced me to sign non-disclosure agreements. I never drove freight again, because late at night, I still hear that rhythmic knocking, and I know whatever was in those tanks wasn't dead. It was just waiting to wake up. Weigh stations are the bane of every trucker's existence. Scales, paperwork, state troopers looking for any excuse to fine you. But the worst inspection I ever faced came from a man who had been dead for 36 years. My name is Ramon Martinez. On August 18th, 2023, I was hauling fresh produce from Fresno to Phoenix along Highway 58. It was past midnight when electronic road signs suddenly illuminated, flashing, "All trucks must enter weigh station." I was confused. The old Kern County scale house had been shut down and boarded up since 2018. Yet the entrance ramp lights were bright neon, and the signal turned green. I pulled over the scale and walked into the inspection office. The interior smelled of rotten mildew and harsh chemicals. The fluorescent lights flickered violently. Behind an ancient metal desk sat an inspector wearing an old Department of Transportation uniform. His skin was pale, waxy, and stretched tight over his skull. "Documents," he rasped, his voice like dry paper dragging across concrete. I handed him my manifest. He filled out a form with a pen that seemed out of ink, scratching deeply into the paper. Then he stood up. Cargo inspection. We walked to the rear of my refrigerated trailer. As soon as he broke the seal and pulled the door open, a wave of horrific stench hit my face. My fresh crates of bell peppers, refrigerated perfectly 10 minutes ago, were completely black, liquefied, and covered in thick gray mold. Cargo contaminated, he said monotonically. Unit failure. Terrified and furious, I followed him back to the desk. As I picked up the pen to sign the release, I glanced at his ID badge. The photograph matched his face, but the issue date read October 1987. How long have you worked at this station? I stuttered. The inspector slowly raised his head. There were no pupils, no irises, just milky, clouded white fluid filling his eye sockets. Night shift, he whispered, revealing black, rotted teeth and a horrific grin. 36 years of service. The work never stops. I dropped my clipboards, ran to my cab, and tore out of the station. State records later confirmed the inspector died of a heart attack at his desk in October 1987. Some men refuse to let death end their shift. They tell you never to pick up hitchhikers on the highway, but when you see a man standing in a sub-zero Nebraska blizzard with no coat, leaving him behind feels like murder. My name is Marcus Thompson. On February 15th, 2023, I was pushing through a brutal whiteout on Interstate 80. Visibility was down to 10 feet. At 1:17 a.m., my headlights caught a figure standing by a broken-down pickup, frantically waving his arms. He wore only a denim jacket and jeans. No gloves, no hat. I pulled over and unlocked the door. He climbed in, shaking snow off his boots. "Thanks for stopping, friend," he said calmly. "Car died 10 miles back. Been walking for hours." 10 miles and -20-degree weather should have turned his fingers black with frostbite, but his hands were smooth and dry. As I pulled back onto the road, I noticed every time I breathed out, my breath condensed in the cold air. When he breathed, nothing came out. No fog, no chest movement, no pulse in his neck. 10 miles outside Lincoln, he turned and looked out his window. "This is where it happened," he murmured gently. "My accident. February 15th, 1987. The blizzard flipped my pickup into the ditch. Took them 3 days to find my body in the snow. Today was February 15th, 2023. Exactly 36 years to the night. David." I whispered, "What year do you think it is?" He turned his head slowly. His eyes were entirely jet black, deep pools of infinite sorrow. "It's 1987, he said softly. "I'm heading home to my wife, Linda. She made pot roast tonight." David. Linda passed away from cancer in 2002. It's been 36 years. David looked down at his hands, a single tear running down his cheek before vanishing into mist. "She waited for me, every night for 15 years. When she died, the last tether holding me to this world snapped. Now I just walk this road, trying to find my way back." When I pulled off at the exit, I turned to look at him. The passenger seat was empty. Lying on the dashboard was an old Polaroid picture written on the back. "David Welsh, February 1987. Drive safe. My love, Linda." They say every veteran driver gets one last run. A hole that officially marks the end of his time on the road. Mine didn't come from my company. It came from a man in a dark suit with a blank envelope. My name is Frank Kowalski. After 43 years of hauling freight out of Chicago, I was 3 weeks away from retirement. That's when my dispatcher called with a private contract paying 10 times my usual rate. The destination wasn't an address. It was a set of GPS coordinates deep in the unmapped wilderness of northwestern Montana. The cargo, a single passenger resting inside a sealed, matte black trailer, is a terminally ill man taking his final journey home. The suit told me. He specifically requested a driver with over 40 years of experience. "Do not stop. Do not open the doors until you reach the coordinates." I drove for 3 days through Dakota snowstorms into the desolate pine forests of Montana. On the final night, my CB radio crackled softly. "Driver. Frank, do you read me? This is Frank. Are you doing all right back there? No, Frank. The weak voice replied. I'm past the need for medicine. Thank you for taking this run. Where's home for you, friend? You'll know when we arrive. At dawn, my GPS led me onto an overgrown logging trail that ceased to exist on any map. The trees opened up into a breathtaking mountain valley surrounded by snow-capped peaks and pristine silence. The GPS display flashed. Destination arrived. I stepped out into the crisp air, walked to the rear of the trailer, and pulled open the heavy doors. The trailer was completely empty. No cargo boxes, no machinery, except for a single hospital bed draped in white sheets. On the pillow lay a handwritten note and an envelope containing my full payment in cash. Frank, thank you for guiding me through the dark one last time. My journey is complete. Tell the other drivers, some roads are longer than a lifetime. William Henderson, 1943 to 2024. Finally home. I retired that very week, but I realized then that drivers don't just haul steel, timber, or food. Sometimes, our job is to carry a weary soul across the final border and guide them safely home.